Greetings, paper demons. Welcome to another live stream. So for this month of August, we're starting another set of lessons, and the focus for this month is going to be composition. If you're unfamiliar with the challenge that we're doing right now, we're doing a challenge for Smogist, and if you're not sure what that is, it's basically you draw dragons every day, which is really awesome and fun. So we're going to do a unique twist on this challenge. Let me bring up the challenge information for you really quick. Forgot to have that tab open. I'm running a little bit behind today. By the way, just as a note, I may be interrupted briefly at some point during this live stream. My husband's not feeling too well. So, and he's home today, and I may have to dart out real quick to check on him. Okay, so paperdemon.com/news. So the challenge we're running for this month is for Smogist, and we're focusing on composition. So that's why the live stream series is going to be teaching you some tips on composition. I think dragons are a really fun thing to use for studying composition or practicing composition. So we're going to cover some of the techniques and basics of composition. Now, I will say though that some of this material does build upon the lessons that we did in the previous like a couple months ago when we were talking about tone. So if you missed that, you might want to go back and watch those videos. So if you click on videos at the top of Twitch, you can access those. But we're going to start by analyzing some artwork done by some really fantastic artists, and kind of, well, I will use that to help illustrate to you some of the aspects of composition. So the first thing I want you to think about with composition is thinking about what your focal point is. So let's put here composition. So we're talking, so the main thing I want you to get, if you get anything from this live stream today, I want you to know about focal points. So what is a focal point? It's basically the area of your painting, your drawing, whatever, that you want the eye to go to, because you don't want the eye to go everywhere. There's usually a specific place that you want the viewer to look. Generally, if you're doing a portrait, the focal point is going to be the face. And actually, practically speaking, anytime you have a face in a composition, in an illustration, the eye is going to go to it. But let's look at some examples of some paintings and where the focal points are in those paintings. I could give you like an example. Let's see. We're going to start with this one. This is by Norman Rockwell. He's an American illustrator, very famous for doing illustrations for, I think this was Saturday Morning Post or something along those lines. I don't remember the exact name, but very famous American illustrator. And what's interesting about this composition, let's talk about first what the focal points are, because there's a lot going on in this painting. So it's one of the reasons why I wanted to cover it, because it's a very interesting painting, and there's a couple of techniques going on here that I want to point out to you. So where's the focal point? Where's your eye going? So just kind of look at this and kind of think, where's the eye going? And it's actually going in a few different places, but I mean, I see my eye, let's see, screen sketch, there we go. I see my eye kind of going here, here. So there's like several focal points here. It's mostly in this region of the painting. So this is like the main area that the eye is being drawn to. And compositionally, what's interesting about this is in addition to there being so many faces here, if you notice, like in the background here, there's a whole bunch of faces, but your eye isn't really looking there. And part of the reason for that is that the contrast is lower. So Norman Rockwell here is using contrast to help guide the eye. You know, this boy here, his skin is dark, which is contrasting with the white of this woman's robe. Her skin is also, even though it's like lighter, it's still kind of dark in comparison to the white of the robe. So by adding that contrast, it's grabbing the eye. The same thing's going on here with this man at the top. His black hat, his white beard, his white, looks like some sort of, I'm not quite sure what that is, but clothing of some sort on top of his head, is grabbing the eye. Whenever you have anything that's like black and white together, that's like the most contrast you could possibly have, and that draws the eye in. Okay, this was kind of a complicated one to start with. Let's look at a simpler one. This is a painting by John Howell. He is an illustrator who actually did concept art for the Lord of the Rings film series. He also did a lot of Lord of the Rings illustrations before the movies came out. So it's kind of interesting that he was like a huge fan of Lord of the Rings for many, many years, creating illustrations, and then got to actually work on the movies, which is neat. Okay, so where's the focal point here? This one is pretty easy. I would say the focal point is about here. And I would put that as like the number one, like a primary number one focal point. Possibly here. This is where like things are pointing to it. So in this case, the painting, there's not as much contrast here like in the Norman Rockwell one that we looked at, but there's a lot of other things that are guiding the eye here. For example, there's one technique you can use in your drawings and paintings is to construct the environment to point the eye to where you want it to go. So if you look at this tree branch up here in the upper left, it's pretty much pointing to look here, look here. So it's these branches are creating rhythms that are pointing the eye. You can also see that there's this person pointing their arrow, another person here pointing their arrow. They're all saying like, look here. So that's a technique you can use when you're constructing your own artwork. And by the way, if you have questions about composition or whatever, you can post them in the chat, and I will respond to them after I get through this slideshow. Or if it's related to the slideshow, I can also answer too. Okay, so there is some use of contrast going on here, but not quite in the same way it was in the Norman Rockwell one. Here we've got a much larger area of light. So it's kind of framed by all this dark area, which helps to basically say, you know, look downward. You can also see all these trees here in the background kind of pointing to where our eye should go. And even the light here on the water is pointing to our main area. I would even argue that the rocks are even slightly pointed to our composition, like our focal point, I'm sorry. So there's quite a few techniques being used here. Here's another branch that's pointing. This is one of the advantages of being an artist or an illustrator versus a photographer, is that you can fudge a lot of the environment to tell the story that you want and to point people to the thing in the picture that you want them to go to, which you can't really do that as much if you're a photographer, because you kind of have to work with what's there. I will say though, studying photography can also be a great way to practice composition, because then you're trying to work with what's there, and it's also a bit quicker practice than trying to draw things out too. All right, so let's take a look at some others. This is another painting by John Howell. And so take a moment to look at this and see if there's anything here that is kind of similar to the techniques we talked about. Is there a focal point? What rhythms are being used, or things that are angled or pointing to focal points? Is use of contrast being used here? And right away, the first thing I notice, like this is where the most contrast is. This is where my eye is being drawn. And notice too how these last two paintings that I showed you, the focal point was not in the center of the painting. And I think a beginning artist often think, oh, the main focal point has to be in the center, and that's actually, it makes things more interesting if it's not centered. I mean, even with the Norman Rockwell one, it was still kind of elevated up a bit. It's not like smack in the center of the canvas. Another thing that I'm noticing here is the use of negative space. So I would actually argue like this is the first focal point. Maybe this is the second one, and then up here might be the third focal point. And there's a nice use of negative space here that creates these shapes that draw your eye to this bridge. Let me erase some of this so it's a little easier to see that again. Boop, 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 boop. Yeah, so this bridge here is catching my eye, not just because there's light, but there is enough contrast here with these little sticks of the bridge and stuff. Something about the shape is really drawing my eye. Another thing too is the negative space here is actually pointing to this bridge. Let me erase that so you can see it again. So if you look at this negative space, there's these shapes that basically create a line going up to that bridge. So your eye starts here, it kind of maybe follows this path, then goes upward, and then here. And you'll notice too that there is this sharp shape here that is basically leading your eye back to the second focal point. So you're kind of going in a circle over and over and over again. Okay, let's get rid of these marks. Another thing I want to point out about this painting with regard to the composition is the use of angles. So we've got angles here, 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 here. And if you look at how those angles are constructed, they're kind of leading into, in a very pleasing way. The rhythm of these angles is very pleasing. There's kind of a lot to look at in this painting, but the use of angles, rhythm, negative space, and contrast, those are all techniques that are being used in this composition to tell this story. Okay, what else we got? I got other stuff to show you. Another John Howe painting. I really like John Howe. I picked him to show in part because he does a lot of fantasy stuff, and given that our challenge for this month is Smogist, it makes sense to show someone who's a fantasy artist. I was trying to find some dragon stuff by him. I've got a few things, which we'll probably cover in in the next live stream. But we will also get into some sketching, practicing out some of these techniques to participate in Smaugust. So I hope you'll join along when we get there. So okay, with this one, I'm seeing a lot of the same like use of angles. The tree branches are your friend in helping guide the eye. Definitely this is the focal point here. Oh. So our focal point is here. And part of the way we know that is because it's got a lot of contrast here. It's not the most, I'm not sure if it's the most contrasty part of the painting, because I think up here with the branches against the light and up here are definitely grabbing the eye too. But this is the area of the main action of what's going on here. I'm pretty sure this is Lord of the Rings when Frodo, or maybe I think this is this the Hobbit? Might be the Hobbit. One of those. Not sure which one it was. So we're telling a story here. We can see this character is inside a barrel going down a river, and it's pretty dramatic, and someone's trying to shoot them up here. Let's get rid of these marks again. So let's take a look at some of the rhythms that are being used to guide the eye. So we already talked about how contrast is being used to guide the eye to that main focal point. What other things are being used to guide the eye there? Well, there's a hell of a lot of rhythms here. This rock is pointing directly there. All of these lines here, the trees and the negative space of the trees or the rock faces, same thing here, pointing down toward that main area. This is kind of guiding the eye upward, up here. You know, I would probably argue that this is like a secondary or third focal point. This waterfall, then when you go from this tree, you can go down this waterfall back to our main focal point. So use the environment of where your dragon is or where your characters are to help guide the eye in where you want them to look. I think also one thing that I've noticed is with paintings where there's like an action scene being depicted, there's a lot more of these angles. It's basically conveys action more. So if you are trying to depict a scene where some sort of action is happening, and in fact let me show you another example of this. It's not in this folder. Oh, where did I see it? I think it was John Howell. Here we go. So this is a pretty intense scene. This horse is like running really fast, and there's a lot of angles going on in this too. This is meant to be like more dramatic. There's a lot of angles, diagonals. Oh, I think I didn't even notice this the first time I looked at this, but there's also the rain is diagonal. All right, let me just check my notes here. I think I covered, so we talked about tone, we talked about rhythm, we did not talk about color, how color can be used to guide the eye. So let me find another example here, because I have tons of them. I think for Frank Frazetta, he uses color quite a bit to draw the eye. Like the more intense saturated colors tend to be where he wants you to look. And notice that he's using that intense saturation in the background rather than on the subject itself. So this is another interesting technique that you can use in your paintings. Like you don't have to make the bright color be the dragon or the object. It could be the background, the negative space behind what you want to guide the eye to create a focal point. I think I have another example here too. I think Muka did this as well. And I think he's also another good example to talk about with rhythm, but the most saturated part of this painting is the flowers. You know, her faces are pretty much always going to be a focal point. But this one also has a lot of other things other than color that are pointing to the focal point. So we've got these rhythms here from the plants. There's this arch here that's pointing to her. The fabric is pointing upward. Legs are pointing to there and leading in to her face. Her hair too, I think, is pointing up. I think too this is kind of like a secondary focal point because there is quite a bit of contrast here, and that focal point is leading into our primary focal point up here of the face. There's a lot of other little rhythms in here too that are interesting, that are kind of complementing the main rhythms of the painting. We'll have to talk about color in another series in more depth. I don't have a lot of good examples with me today on color, usage of color for as a focal point. But I'm hopeful that you still got the idea. Okay, so next I'm going to do a demonstration on thumbnailing. Hey, there's people in the chat. Sorry, I didn't see it. Welcome, Dragon Lady. Eliana, welcome. Schwarzer. Oh, Schwarzer's here too, the whole gang. Okay, I have my chat in a more seeable spot. But it cleared it. Where is the chat now? I don't see any messages. I guess when you pop out the chat box, it then clears everything. The time zone agrees with you this time. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's probably Bilbo Baggins in that one painting. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a technique that you can use to help you to construct a good composition using some of these techniques. And that is basically thumbnailing, which I've done. Actually, let's summarize a few things here. Focal point, and you can achieve that focal point with contrast of values. You can do it with rhythms. If you can spell rhythms, I don't know how to spell it. Someone help me out here. And color. There's probably others, but those are things that you can use to go guide the eye to your focal points. And then the next thing I'm going to talk about is thumbnailing. My face is covering the picture. That's no good. Hold on. You guys can't read that. There we go. Okay, so we're doing the Smogist challenge. Let's give this a try. I need to find the prompts for Smogist. I think I have it here. Smogist. Okay, I don't know what's the official prompts for 2019. We'll just try this one. So today is the 7th. So we're supposed to do hell, All right, we can go with that. Can you link to the board in the chat? Yes, I can. Yes, I can. 1 second. Copy link address. There we go. Okay, so here's the Pinterest board. It's also linked in the news post with the challenge information, so I'll link you to that as well. Special thanks to Chipper Chartreuse for putting together that Pinterest board with some good tutorials and stuff on drawing dragons. So let's do some thumbnailing. Where's my layers? Okay, I'm gonna hide this one. Alright, so why are we doing thumbnailing, and what is thumbnailing? Thumbnailing is a very quick, small sketch of what you're trying to draw. And it's a way of both brainstorming and to test out your composition. Because you can pretty much figure out right away with thumbnailing whether the composition is working or not generally. So, okay, our prompt is hell. And it's for Smogus, so there has to be a dragon in there, right? Let me switch to a pencil here, my trusty handy dandy pencil. Okay, so a dragon that's like, I'm thinking of a dragon like kind of here, maybe with its wings. And maybe there's just so many flames that looks like hell. Maybe there's some rocks or something here. I'm imagining there would be a lot of bright fire, orange, yellow going on here. The dragon might be dark to create some contrast. What does hell look like? I'm imagining too some, what are they? There's stalactites, stalagmites. What are they? The things that are in a cave that are pointing down, that are kind of. I'm imagining this like in a. Hell would look something like being in a cave or something. I'm thinking that this, maybe the dragon has to be a bit of a mid-tone. Kind of filling in some grays here. Thinking about the tonal. What is my focal point? My focal point is the dragon's head. And I'm pointing to it with some of the structures around it. So, for example, if we go back to red here, create a layer. It's not listening to me. Okay, so this is pointing down, and then this is pointing up to the dragon. Dragon. Also, the wing can be pointed at his face. And there's also would be more contrast around his face, because that would be the brightest part of the fire anyway, which would draw the eye there. So we'd be using value to create contrast. Okay, so that's one. We just did that in what, like 2 minutes, and figured out a composition. Let's try some more. Let's try some more. And if you've got ideas for this, Post in the chat. Happy to hear from you. Hell. Okay. Hell. I'm imagining like a throne or something, and a dragon sitting atop it. Actually, this would make more sense as a portrait orientation. Erase. Make that bigger. Bigger eraser. There we go. Let's try pushing this up a little bit. Oh, it looks like a Batman right now. I don't know why, but I just kind of imagined a dragon sitting on a throne. And maybe there's fire behind him or something. This would be dark. And then the light would be used in the background to draw the eye. What does hell look like? I am Batman. No, I'm not really Batman. Okay. Let's try another one. Maybe there's more than one dragon. Maybe there's dragons in hell. Maybe there's people there in hell suffering. Like now I'm thinking like people here bound to like a rock or something. They're just kind of in pain. Oh man, this is getting dark, guys. The dragon's the most important part though, so I'm trying to think of what two dragons might look like if they're fighting or something. I am not super experienced with drawing dragons, so this challenge is going to be a learning experience for me as well. Again, using some sort of structures or negative space. Actually, I've been overusing those cave stalactites, stalagmites, thingy-jiggies. So let's maybe think about it as the background, like kind of how we saw in that in some of the John Howe paintings. Let's darken that a little bit. Dragons torturing people in hell, yes. Knights being tortured by the innocent dragons they killed in hell. Oh, I like that. What if it's hell for dragons? Oh, so assuming they're fire dragons in a more watery environment. Let's try that. Okay, hold on. Let me just finish out this composition here. I'm imagining that this whole thing of people here would be dark just to create some depth. I've got this structure that's in the foreground, and I've got it dark, and you know, maybe there's some more people here, but they're lighter. They're not as important, but they're just kind of there to convey what's going on. Or maybe they're attached to poles or something. That's another thing too. Okay, let's try these other ideas. Let's move on. Okay. Knights being tortured by innocent dragons they killed in hell. I like this. Okay. Would they be I don't know why, but I keep thinking of them as like tied up against something. Like they can't move, they can't run away. Or maybe they are running. Maybe compositionally this isn't quite working. We'd probably want to tweak it. Let's move this up a little bit. What's our focal point? We didn't talk about the focal points in the last two. Let's talk about the focal points real quick. Focal point here is number 1, and here is number 2. And this one just has one focal point, which is here. This one could be 1 and 2, or these two could be equally focal points. Probably the dragon's face is going to be intense enough. Let's take another pass at this idea of knights being tortured. Oh, I drew on the wrong layer. Guys, you're supposed to help me not do that. Wrong layer. Okay. Knights being tortured. Well, I'm just remembering that we talked about more action scenes having a lot more angles in them rather than just being parallel or perpendicular. Layers are evil, yes they are. I like this idea of the water one. I want to do that one too. Knights being tortured. Maybe they're hanging upside down. The arms are bound behind them. Maybe there's one further in the distance. Maybe they're hanging on ropes. So I'm using a compositional trick here of varying the size of the objects. So I've got a person that's like closer to us here, and then some ones further in the distance. This also helps to create more interesting compositions when you can vary the size. He's tickling him with his tongue. This is one way to go. Oh, actually, it would have been made more sense. If he's torturing them with his tongue, they should be hanging with their feet out, and he should be tickling their feet with his tongue. Let's redraw real quick. The similar composition. Knight's here. Oh wait, I just drew him upside down. Come on, Susie, pay attention. Focus! Focus! Okay. Maybe his face is here. I don't want him too close to the edge. I think this needs to be a little bigger. Let's fix this. This is another reason why thumbnailing is like really helpful, because it's a small, quick pass, and you can easily move things around, or like even if you're not working digitally, it's real easy to just erase and redraw. I don't know how to draw a dragon. I don't know how to draw his face. Maybe he has a claw up here too. These poor unfortunate souls. Okay, so our focal point, where is it? Probably here. That's where the action happens, right? So we want to draw our eye there. We can texture the background to point the eye there. We can add things to the environment that help to point it. In fact, right now, the way that we have these people oriented, they're all parallel. We could rotate them a little bit so that they're all kind of pointing more at the focal point we have, if we wanted. Also, the claw here is pointing there. Like so. Okay, let's try this water idea. a fire dragon in a watery environment. That would be its hell. I'm thinking. Would it perhaps be completely submerged? Perhaps this is where the light from the sun is. Beams of light are coming down. Although, would there be light in hell? Maybe not. And maybe there's a dragon here. And his chest is glowing because he's trying to breathe fire, but it's not coming out. All that comes out is smoke. Actually, let's change this a little bit. Maybe his head would be angled up a little bit more, like he's in distress. Like we're seeing the underside of his jaw or something. I feel like this is too big. Scale that a little bit. The focal point would probably be his chest glowing, because I've seen before depictions of dragons where when they're anticipating, the anticipation motion of them breathing the fire, their chest starts to glow. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about here. And I think actually the dragon should be rotated a little more. In many of these compositions, I seem to be having the dragon really dark and then the background light. But I don't know, actually maybe it should be the opposite here. Since the chest is where we want the eye to be drawn, actually might make more sense to have the background pretty dark too. Let me try with a brush. It is hell after all. Should probably be pretty dark. can either make the dragon a little darker or the background a little darker, because right now the dragon is getting lost. Maybe we'll try making the background darker, just to change it up, because I've been kind of following the same pattern with the other thumbnails. Sketchbook crashed. Thankfully, we didn't lose much. Another thing we can do is just add a little bit of rim light on the dragon. This is actually quite a bit of time to be spent on a thumbnail. Usually you do them real quick. Metallic, welcome to the stream. Yeah, it crashed, but it does that. It's funny because I switched to doing using Autodesk Sketchbook for these live streams because Photoshop was crashing. So why can't I find a painting program that's easy to use and does not crash? Actually, I've got this off the screen here, so let me just reposition this. But yeah, I'm kind of thinking of the chest is glowing, so maybe that would be the brightest point in the painting. Maybe there's little bubbles. Another compositional trick we can use is, in some of these other thumbnails, I've got the dragon all dark on light or light on dark. You can actually do a combination of both. So for example, I've got some rim light. Let me make this more small. Smaller. Okay. So as if there's like a little bit of light that's hitting the wings. And if I wanted, I could also... Why are you adjusting the volume? Why are you not like me? I'm supposed to rush the brush size. There we go. Could make the wings dark and then the background a little bit lighter on this side. It crashed again. Recovering. That feels a little bit complex, but I think it could work if I put this into final. But there definitely needs to be a little bit more work with this rhythmically. Also, the wings are way off. Like one of them is way up here and the other one's way down here. Would probably have to be moved. Okay, my window is open and there's a lot of noise coming from it, so I'm going to close it in a second. I think rhythmically this doesn't quite look good with the way that the wings are positioned, so I might want to think more about that. Take another pass at it. Are there any questions? Actually, think about if there's any questions that you have about composition. I'm going to go close my window. 1 second. Okay, we are getting to the end of our stream. So let's see. Try the GIMP. I do not like GIMP at all. I find GIMP very hard to use. I think the user interface is not very good. I like Sketchbook because it's good for a touch, because my screen is a touch screen, so I can tap on things. Things are big enough that I can actually tap them. Also, what I like about it is it works on my phone too, so I could start something on my phone and then finish it here. My Paint. I can check that one out. I haven't tried that one. Let me write that down. I might just end up going back to Photoshop because it's been working just fine lately when I've been live streaming. So I tried Krita and I gave it a real serious try. Like I tried it for a pretty good while. There's a desktop version of Autodesk Sketchbook that's better than the Windows 10 version. Okay, I can take a look and see which one I have. I would have liked to have like gotten a little bit further with one of these, like basically pick one and push it into an illustration. But I have other things I do need to get to today, so maybe we could take a pass at refining this in the next live stream. So our next live stream is going to be on Wednesday next week, same time. So it's going to be every Wednesday this month, and we're going to talk about depth. So how to use depth to tell your story. So we talked a lot about compositional stuff today, like focal points and how to use tone and everything. But lesson 2, we're going to talk more about how to achieve depth and using that as a compositional trick. And I kind of demoed a little bit of that today. Like with this particular thumbnail, I'm using a lot of depth. I've got these different layers, so we're going to talk in more depth on. We're going to talk in more depth about depth. Oh, Corel Draw. Have you tried that one? Do you like that one? I haven't tried Corel Draw in a long time. Like, I probably last tried that like 25 years ago or something. 20 years ago or something. Is it still around? Like, would it run on a modern computer? Oh, you don't know if it still exists. Yeah, I'll have to look into it. Metallic, are you on Paper Demon under a different name? Cause I know you've popped in the stream before, but I don't remember if you're active on Paper Demon or not. And oh, you're Granham. Oh shit. Okay. Yeah, I kind of realized after like one of the previous streams I was telling you about the doodles and stuff, and like I'm like, is this someone that already knows? Telling you things that you already know. All right. Graham, thanks for popping in the stream. Thanks, Eliana, as well. Let's do a raid. Let's see if we can raid someone. Raids are fun. Let's see who we can raid. Can we raid Sleepy Mia? That would be a dream come true if I could raid her. I like her. She's cool. All right, Paper Demons, get ready. Oh, she is. She's, okay, so Sleepy Mia, she's live right now. She's an artist. She's pretty cool. We're gonna raid her. She's really nice. I try to raid her every week, but I have not been successful so far because she's either had like power. She had a power outage last time I tried to raid her, and previous times, like when I tried to raid, like she wasn't live when I thought she would be. I think because of other issues that came up. She was sick one day, that kind of thing. So finally, she's live. We're finally gonna raid Sleepy Mia. I'm so excited. All right, everyone. Here's what you have to post in the chat because this is like an inside joke. There's like I think there's some sort of inside joke with sneezing. So post a chew or sneezes when we get into her chat. All right, let's go. Ready? Okay. Ready? Set. Go.